Pardon me, we're good. Yep, we're good. All right. Well, all right. So yeah, we're good. So hello everyone. Welcome into another episode of Matt Sports Talk. And I know I've already mentioned that I am going to continue to do daily game recaps for the Crossroads League on the men and the women's side. And that does not resume until January. So I'll either be resuming that either on Sunday, January 4th or Monday, January 5th. And I'm really looking forward to that. Now, in this video, I wanted to talk about some really interesting, I wouldn't say interesting topics, so to speak, but something that is really interesting is talking about the latest projections based off of the Massey ratings, I should say, based off of that, where their projections are for all 8 Crossroads League schools in terms of where they will finish. And that is what I wanted to talk about in this video, because I think it's really interesting where they have everybody projected to be, at least for quite a few of the teams. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Now, before we do, again, these are just computer projections. At least I'm pretty sure that's what the Massey ratings are. It's just computer tabulated results and projections. So again, take that with a grain of salt, because every single conference is just so competitive this year. And we've seen, we saw yesterday 3 massive upsets. And again, this is on the women's side of things. We got 3 massive upsets yesterday. We had Indiana Wesleyan losing to St. Thomas. We also had University of Science of the Arts in Oklahoma upsetting receiving votes Mid-America Christian, also out of Oklahoma. And then, of course, we also had William Carey being undefeated and them upsetting number 23 Georgetown by 7. So it was, it's so competitive this year across all conferences. And of course, we had Dordt losing to Doane out of Nebraska. Of course, Dort's out of Iowa. And of course, Dordt lost, I think it was last week, roughly about a week and a half ago, losing in overtime in a game where Dordt shot the ball absolutely horrible. Now, does that mean that Dordt is still not among, the best top 3 teams in the nation? No. I mean, they still are easily, pardon me, they're still easily a top 5 team in the country, no question about it. It's just that, some teams have bad games, and that just happened to Dordt. That's what happened to Dordt, I should say, when they lost in that surprising upset to Doane, who going into that game was 2-6. So, I mean, you talk about, that was the monumental upset of the year by far. Pardon me. At least so far. So getting back into the Crossroads League, now these are the updated projections. And I'm going to go from bottom to top, because this is where the closer we get to the top, the more interesting that it gets. So we're going to start first on the bottom. And I also wrote down on my sheet of paper where all of these teams currently are in terms of the Massey rating. Now, obviously, in the latest RPI ranking, you had Indiana Wesleyan ranked 50th. You also had Huntington, I believe, ranked them a top 15. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly where the rest of the Crossroads League schools were at in terms of the RPI. Now, the ARC does not come out until January 20th, so we got about a month left before we really know where all the Crossroads League schools stand in terms of that. And they're also going to do quad records. Those are going to be released also at that time, which is a new methodology this year from the NAIA selection committee in terms of ranking teams that have a chance to go into a national tournament. Those that for sure are locked in, or for those for sure that are locked, or will be locked, I should say, and then those, of course, that would be on the bubble as well. So the first team we're going to look at in the Crossroads League is Goshen. They're having, they have a first year, I believe they have, a second year head coach, Tyra Carver. And despite that, Goshen lost a lot of players from last year, and they do have some scoring, but they have really struggled this year against ranked opponents. Now, in games with ranked opponents this year, Goshen has lost by at least 35 points or more in all of them. So, obviously, I don't really expect Goshen to really be that competitive moving forward, especially in conference as we head into January and February. Now, now they are projected to pick up 2 more wins, and actually that will be their next 2 games, which will be against I believe will be against IU Kokomo coming up tomorrow, and then Holy Cross coming up on December 30th. But outside of that, for Goshen, they're basically projected to lose out outside of that. And obviously, that's not something you want to see. But again, those are just computer projections. So again, take all that with a grain of salt, because projections and odds don't mean anything. The rankings don't mean anything. The standings don't mean anything. And what matters is just the amount of talent that you have on your team, how much work and effort you want to put in, to making your team, trying to make your team better, I should say, and putting in the amount of work and effort, not just in practice, but also in drills and and then of course during games, how much fire, well, not fire, but how much oomph, so to speak, that you want to play with, in terms of games and just trying to get better and maybe upset some teams. For some teams closer to the top, that definitely is in line, but I just don't see that with Goshen. At this point, Goshen projected to finish last, which they were projected to finish last in preseason, so no surprise there. They're projected to finish 4-28 overall, 0-18 in the conference. They're ranked 148th in the Massey rating out of 220. So obviously, that pretty much tells you all you need to know with them. And next up is Mount Vernon Nazarene. They're currently projected to finish 9th. They were projected to finish 8th in preseason, so they're still roughly projected to be right where they are more than likely going to finish, and they are ranked 95th in the Massey rating as of today. And this is a Lady Cougar team. They're under a first-year head coach, Lauren Van Hoos. And now, they have played some ranked teams tough, but something that Mount Vernon has struggled with this year in particular, not just this year, but really the last several years, as far as that goes, they have really struggled with turnovers per game. In fact, the last 2 games they've had 25 or more turnovers, and that's turned into 30 or more points into their opponents. Like last night, they played Cumberland out of Tennessee, lost by 31 points, had 28 turnovers, and Cumberland converted that into 35 points, I should say. So, I mean, this is a Cougar team that, they do have size down low. I mean, they have Anna Swisshelm, and they also have Naomi Kibe, they have Angela Roshak. Do they have, size down low? Absolutely. But they are just really cannot figure out how to beat the press against teams that press them and force them into turnovers. And that is something that Mount Vernon has struggled with all year long. And I definitely agree with the latest projections for them. They're projected to be 6-26 on the year, 2-16 in the conference, and that is really the worst that they have been in probably over 15 years as far as that goes. So obviously, at least 10 years. I think it was 2014 or 15. They were 10-20 on the year. So, they're on pace to be probably the worst that they've been in the last 10 years. And obviously, having a first-year head coach, it might not work out the best for them. Now, will they be able to improve from that moving forward? I believe they can. It's going to take a lot of work and effort, that is for sure. And then and then 8th place, Grace is projected to finish 8th, to be the final team in. Pardon me. To be the final team in for the Crossroads League tournament. They're projected to be 11-19 on the year, 4-14 in the conference. They're currently ranked 69th in the Massey rating. And this is a Lady Lancer team that, they definitely have a lot of size down low. They have, I believe, 4 players that are 6'1" or taller. So, they have the size down low to rebound. They have the size, to score layups, maybe run some backdoor cuts along the baseline. So, in terms of that, they definitely have the scoring capability. They are excellent on defense. They press every team that they play. Now, the one thing for Grace is, just like Mount Vernon, Grace is really struggling this year in terms of ball control, and that's something that we saw with them a little bit last year, not to the extent of what they have been so far this year. Now, is there room for them to improve on that under head coach Dan Davis? Absolutely. But I just think that this is a Grace team that, unless they can really put the pieces to the puzzle together in the second half of conference play once we head into the new year, I think this is a team that, if they're unable to do that, they're going to continue to struggle to win conference games and struggle to win some other non-conference games as well. So I definitely agree with the latest computer projections based on the Massey rating for them, finishing in that number 8 spot. And for sure. And then in 7th place, you have Bethel out of Indiana. They were, of course, these are all Crossroads League schools on the women's side. Bethel's a team that was projected 6th in preseason, so they're pretty much exactly right where they were projected to be. Now, they are 61st right now in the Massey. They're projected to finish 14 and 17 overall, 15 and 13 in the conference, or 5 and 13 in the conference. I stand corrected. 4 and 17 overall, 5 and 13 in the conference. Do I agree with that? Absolutely. Now, they do have some really good, they've had really good balanced scoring this year from freshman Isabel No, as well as returners Justice Williams, Isabel Scales, and Gracie Lambs. They've scored a lot of points this year under the leadership of those players, as well as senior Mariah Claywell, who leads the team this year. Leads the team, one of the leaders on the team, I should say. Now, is this a Bethel team that can maybe surprise a couple of teams in the second half of the season? I think so, but to me, they're another team that has really struggled with turnovers this year. They're averaging 18 turnovers a game, which is pretty near right along their season average of last year. Now, are they putting up points this year against ranked teams? Yes, they put up 60 points against Marion. They put up 63 points against Taylor, and only lost both those games by 13 and 14 points respectively, 13 to Marion, 14 to Taylor. So this is a team that can score a lot of points against ranked opponents. Now, is that going to continue against Indiana Wesleyan? Is that going to continue, against Marion the second time, Spring Arbor both times? That is possible, especially because Indiana Wesleyan is really struggling on the road this year. But they have been lights out at home, and I'll talk more about them coming up momentarily. So, do I think Bethel can improve? Yes. Do I think the odds of that, of them, making a top 5 run, are the odds of that, pretty high? Probably not. But I definitely agree with Bethel finishing in that 7th spot, which is roughly about where I had them projected in preseason anyway. So I agree with that. Now, Taylor, on the other hand, this is a team that was projected to finish 7th, and I had them, I believe, also finishing 7th, and they're projected to finish 6th right now. They are undefeated at 12-0. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because this is a Trojan team that, they are undefeated this year. Now, 10 of their 12 wins have come against non-ranked teams. The only ranked wins they have so far this year is against then number 13 Indiana Wesleyan, and at that time receiving votes Olivet Nazarene. So is this a Lady Trojan team that can make some serious noise and potentially be a top 4 contender? Yes. Is that going to be difficult? I think so, especially because they still have 2 games against Marion. They still have 2 games against Spring Arbor. They still have 2 games against St. Francis, and they still have 2 games against Huntington. And Huntington has been really a team that is definitely on fire this year. They just had freshman Isabel Shepard come back fully healthy. She lit it up in their last game at home against Ohio Christian, 25 points off the bench and 9 steals in the game. So, and I'll talk more about them momentarily as well. Now, once I get done talking about Taylor, I'm going to record a part 2 video because I want to try to keep both these videos to 15 minutes or less. So Taylor, they're currently ranked 22nd in the Massey rating. If I did not allude to Bethel's Massey rating, they're 61st. Taylor's ranked 22nd in the Massey. So that's obviously really good for them, 22nd in the Massey. Now, the one downside for Taylor is they have a really low strength of schedule number, and that's obviously something you don't want to see in terms of a national tournament selection committee, looking at that. But Taylor, they are decently high in the RPI, so that is, now there's still a long ways to go. It's only December, so, we still got roughly 2.5 months to go until the national tournament selection. So a lot of things can change. A lot of teams can get better. A lot of teams, are looking really good right now. Others are not. But again, there's plenty of time to improve. Taylor is projected to finish 21-9, 9-9 in the conference. Now, believe it or not, the first 4 games in January, based on the Massey ratings computer projections, they have Taylor dropping the first 4, and that is to Marion, St. Francis, Huntington, and Spring Arbor. Do I think Taylor's going to lose all 4 of those games? Personally, I don't think so, because they have a really talented freshman, Casey Warfel, who's leading the NAIA and scoring this year 22.5 points a game, as well as Selena Blount, who is a 6'2", transfer D1, University of Charleston. She's playing outstanding in terms of rebounding and blocking. So is this a Taylor team that I can definitely see finishing in the top 5 or 6? Yes. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Part 2 is coming up momentarily, so make sure that you stay tuned for that, and I will see you in the next video.